Hello there, fellow truth seekers. Doug Foster coming to you again on this another Shabbat. Hope everything's well with you folks. Hope you've been blessed. Today I want to talk about Satan's deceptions. He is the father of lies and deceit, murderer from the beginning. He murdered us all basically. Because of what Adam and Eve did. Sin passed on to all of us, and death by sin. But we have to be fully aware of his modus operandi, his mode of operation. How he operates. That's why the scriptures tells us, that he would deceive the entire world. But for the sake of the elect, he won't be able to, because we have the Ruach to speak to our mind and to lead us to truth and to teach us all things. So we need to understand how he operates and how, what he does in order to deceive us, because there's coming a great deception, and a lot of people are going to be led down the path of, and if you look at how one of the ways he operates is he always tries to counterfeit everything that the Father does. But the difference is that the Father tells us in advance what he's going to do. He says, I won't do anything except I tell the prophets first, what I plan on doing. And he tells us the end from the beginning. And so that's how we can know his truth, is because it always comes to pass. And he always tells us. Everything Satan and his minions do, they all do it in secrecy. They plan and scheme and do everything that, set the scenario up for the deception. They've been doing it for a long time, and and they've been operating through, we've talked about this before, Mystery Babylon, the Babylonian religious system that began over there in Mesopotamia, going all the way back to Babel. This false religion, and how over time it has migrated and it landed in Rome, and we can actually historically trail this. Whenever the Medo-Persians took over Babylon, the religious people there, naturally they always figure out some kind of way to work their way into the religious system, because they don't care. Because their religion is a false religion. So if they just merge into another false religion, they just all kind of merge their belief systems, and then they move on as when another empire rises and overtakes this other empire, they just move right into that religious system. They don't care. That's why I've said that Roman Catholicism, if you look at it, really kind of look at it good, with a hard look, you'll find that there's little elements of all kinds of religions in it. From all of these false religions, there's just little elements of it in there. And that's why, in the end, there'll be just one religion, one worldwide religion, is because they will allow all these different elements in there. So they'll say, look, we accept all religions. We're all worshiping the same God. And of course, they are. They're worshiping Satan. He's the God of this world, this current world. And of course, Adam gave that rulership over to him whenever he disobeyed Elohim. But as always, I like to show these things through the scriptures. And we're going to go here to Zachariah chapter 3 verse 1, and what this is talking about is This is the high priest, but it's talking about how Satan accuses us. He goes up before the throne of Elohim, and he accuses us. So he says, and he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord. And this is the Lord is showing Zachariah this. Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to resist him. A adversary. It's what Satan means. He's an adversary. And the Lord said unto Satan, the Lord rebuked thee, O Satan, even the Lord, and again, we got to understand, this is the pre-incarnate Messiah rebuking him. Okay, and he's rebuking him to Yahuwah. And the word basically, said unto Satan, Yahuwah rebuke thee, O Satan, even Yahuwah that has chosen Jerusalem rebuke thee. Is not this a brand plucked out of the fire? Now Joshua was clothed with filthy garments and stood before the angel, and he answered and spake unto those that stood before him, saying, Take away the filthy garments from him. And unto him he said, Behold, I have caused thine iniquity to pass from thee, and I will clothe thee with change of raiment. And of course, this is talking, and really this is a showing in advance the Messiah basically coming and cleansing us, and us being dressed in fresh, clean garments, and that shows that we have been cleansed. But Satan is, right there trying to prevent that. He's an adversary. He's there trying to accuse us, and so he's active. He's always active. Like I've said before, he don't never rest. He don't never stop. He don't never quit. With his attack on humanity. And of course, a lot of times he doesn't directly attack us himself, but he has minions. He has other fallen beings, and he also has the demonic, the demons that do his bidding. And whenever a person becomes born again, I kind of believe that when we are reborn in Christ, and we take on that being a part of the priesthood, then he assigns a demonic entity or somebody to try to be an adversary to us, and to try to sow doubt in our mind, to try and put obstacles in our way, to trip us up, try to tempt us. So I think that's kind of what happens is, it may be in Scripture where it even kind of implies that, but and Satan himself can also attack you. Like he did Job, he directly began to attack him. And we also have to understand that there's more than one Satan. There is the Satan, the main one, the leader of the rebellion against the Father. But then there are other Satans, because it just means adversary. So any of his minions are, could be called Satans, because they're all are adversaries. So Satan has been setting up, because like I say, he's had a long time to plan these things out, how he's going to deceive mankind. And of course, what better way to do that than through a false Christianity? You couldn't use a better way. And when you look at Revelations here, let's see. I think it's Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. Let me look here. We've got so many scriptures about this because this is something that we really need to understand. Of how he works. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. You know, having two horns like a lamb is showing that he is trying to portray himself as a Christ, or or as Christ, the Lamb. But he speaks like a dragon. So this entity, this Antichrist or whatever, is going to appear like a Christ, like somebody that is, righteous. But when you listen to his words, they're the words of the dragon, the serpent, the devil. And that's, how, he's going to appear like a righteous man, like like Christ. He's going to have Christ-like characteristics, but his words are not going to match his actions. They're going to be blasphemous, and they're going to be totally in opposition to the commandments of the Messiah or of Elohim, because it says that he's the lawless one. Okay, lawless, it's not talking about man's law, it's talking about Elohim's law. He's lawless. He doesn't want anything to do with the Ten Commandments. And I mean, if you look at this church, this Roman church, they have changed, it says he seeks to change laws and traditions and customs, and they've been doing that. They've been doing that all along, taking the commandments and changing them. And I would say that by when he shows up and reveals himself as to what he really is, that they're going to be completely, their commandments and the commandments of the Father is going to be completely different. One's going to be totally antithetical to it. And we can already see this lawlessness at work in the world. I mean, and it's only getting worse. And the thing is it talks about how these 10 future kings or whatever, are of one mind with him. They're going to be doing the same things, and you can kind of see the beginnings of this going on with our own leadership here in America. I mean, they're kind of lawless. I mean, they are lawless. And they are masters at projection. They project onto others the very things that they themselves are doing. And of course, this is a book right out of Goebbels' handbook. You shout a lie out loud enough and long enough, and you'll get people to believe it. Especially when you're censoring people, you're suppressing the truth. And it, and all that stuff's political, but it all boils down to the same thing. It is part and parcel of this deception, and it's because of people's unwillingness to turn from their wickedness that it happens. I mean, these people didn't just get up there overnight. I mean, this is something that's been going on for a long time, but now they're in your face about it, and they can kind of come out and say, well, you elected us, you put us up here, you've allowed this to happen, so you must not have a problem with it. Well, and that's because, most people, even all these people that kind of tend to want to think that they're good moral people, have stood by and allowed it to happen. And, and this is, people think that there's some kind of political solution to these things. Well, there's not. There is no political solution to a sin problem. And so even these so-called moral people, they have, their own sins, skeletons in the closet, that they, have themselves. And, they bark about some things, but then other things they don't bark so much about. That's because they're practicing these things too. And, the more, blatant stuff, abortion, and that's good that people are opposed to that, because that is murder, murdering babies, in sacrifice to false gods. But there's other things that people kind of, I'm doing it a little bit too, so I'm not going to say nothing about that. Well, when it comes to righteousness and truth, you can't pick and choose. You either got to be all about truth, or you either, if you shelter one lie, then basically none of your other truth matters, because that's where it talks about if you violate one of his laws, you violated them all. So we have to understand that this is the way that Satan works. One is dividing people, division, and the way he did Eve, causing doubt in people. And we're to the point where here in this country, most of the people that call themselves Christians are just Christians in name only, and that's only because they were born into a family that called themselves Christians or whatever. But as far as actually being a part of the body of Christ, they are not. They're just that in name. And so for those people, whenever this religious system really becomes full bore, and he begins to doing the lying wonders and signs and all this stuff, they're going to be caught right up in it, because they have no foundation. And this foundation, the Word, and who is the Messiah? John chapter 1 verse 1. The Word. He was the Word from the beginning. And so he is the Word. And, he's the Lord of the Sabbath. All of this is about him. And all this Word. He established it. The Father gave it to him, gave him the command to create everything and to put this Word here. That's why we see him all throughout Scriptures, the First Covenant books. We see him everywhere. And he's been directing all of this under the command of the Father. He says, all power in heaven and on earth have been given unto me. So, he has all the power in heaven and on earth. But the reason that this stuff has to play out is because, Adam and Eve basically showed the Father the door, showed the Messiah the door and said, look, thank you for, creating us and giving us this world. Now we're going to go out here and do it the way we want to do it. Okay, so, and man's been doing that ever since. Even though he could heal us, he could, he can change us. He can restore us into communion with him. Majority of mankind rejects that. They don't want that. They want to go their own way. And so that opens people right up. Makes them ripe for the picking by, the adversary, the deceiver. And of course, and of course, if you look today, the way he casts doubt into people's minds is that, well, Christianity, man, it's you can't do that's deceiving there. That's it don't want you to have no fun. It don't want you to live the way you want to live. It's got rules. It's got laws. I don't have that. Come to my religion. I'm all inclusive. And if you listen to the rhetoric of all these political people and all that stuff about inclusiveness, you see, it's setting the framework for this deception, for this big lie, this religious deception. And of course, again, if you ain't grounded, you're going to get deceived. And so, this Antichrist, this false Christ, that has, two horns like a lamb, speaks like a dragon, and I've said before about how smooth he is. Okay, I want to look here at Matthew chapter 4, just to lay the groundwork or just, to validate what I said about Satan's rulership of the world. And this is in Matthew chapter 4, verses 8 through 10. And this is when Christ was out in the wilderness and he was being tempted after having fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. He was physically weak, but he was spiritually strong, which is, one of these times I'm going to do a video on fasting and the purpose for it. It is to strengthen us spiritually. But he says, again, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, and saith unto him, all these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Then saith Christ Jesus unto them, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only thou shalt serve. Now you notice, he didn't say, oh, you ain't got the authority to give me these places. Never said that. Never disputed it. Okay, so because it was and is at this point in time Satan's. He has control of this world. And he because all you got to do is look around the world. I mean, look at the media, look at the entertainment industry, look at everything. And you can see the fingerprints of Satan all over it. The governments. Now, granted, the Father, Yahuwah, has, he's the final authority on all. The eternal, it has the final word on everything. We can see that where Nebuchadnezzar, he made him to become like an animal to prove to him that he was the one that determined who ruled in the kingdoms of men. Satan will, go to put somebody on a throne or in a position of power, and if the Father doesn't want him there, they're not going to be there. And it's the same with, trying to put people in office up here in Washington, D.C. They're appointed. We can, people can think they have this choice to vote and all that. They're appointed. And that's just the way it is. And that's the reason whenever people, are trying their best to get a certain person elected and they don't, that's because it's already been determined who is going to sit there. And of course, once the Father says, okay, yeah, you can put that person there, then Satan is going to stop you from being able to put somebody there that he doesn't want there. Now again, the father has to say, okay, you can do it, but and this is to bring about the father's plan that he's had since before man was ever put here. Because he can see, he tells us the end from the beginning, so he sees everything in advance. And of course, America has got to come down and fall. I mean, it's just the way it is. The Western nations, or the former ruling entities, the United Kingdom and America, that once controlled almost half of the world. And we can look around. I mean, even if you watch the lamestream media, you can, even on there, you can see, even though they try to suppress a lot of it, but you can look around, you can find sources of information that will give you, some truth about what's going on geopolitically around the world. And you can see a realignment happening. I mean, it's just, right in front of our face. I mean, what's going on over in Russia and China and with India, the Middle East. You see these realignments happening. And then because of America's so indecisive and so divided, the Europeans are beginning to look at us as not reliable, and so it's going to naturally propel them, into eventually, making their own military, and the Europeans are, pretty technologically capable. I mean, if you look at a lot of our military here in America, a lot of the technologies that go into them are developed over in Europe. So if they get to a point where they just say, you know what, we're doing away with NATO, we're going to build our own defenses, and Emmanuel Macron of France, that's what he's been calling for. I mean, he's one of the uppity people, upper people in European politics. Along with the Germans, they pretty much control what goes on in the European Union. I mean, and it talks about, in Daniel, when he had the vision, when Nebuchadnezzar had the vision of this statue, and the head of gold, the breast and arms of silver, and the stomach and thighs of bronze, and the legs of iron, and the feet of iron mixed with miry clay. The 10 toes, we see a parallel to that with Revelations, the beast having 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns on those horns, or 10 kings who have not yet come into their, and a little horn that comes up out of them. Well, these 10 toes and, the feet of iron mixed with miry clay, this is an alliance, and it's, a revision of the Roman Empire. Because the legs of iron was Rome, and and the reason there was 2 legs, because there was 2 parts to the Roman Empire. There was the western part that was governed through Rome, and then there was Constantinople, what later became the Byzantine Empire, was the eastern leg of it. It got, because the Roman Empire got so big that it was unmanageable with, just from Rome. They could not administer it because they didn't have the technologies we do now of instantaneous communications and stuff like that. So it was impossible for them to maintain control over this entire, so they had 2, they had what they call co-regents or whatever, 2 emperors, one in Constantinople, one in Rome, and they administered, this part, and Rome administered this part. Well, that's what them 2 legs represents. All right, is these 2 parts of the Roman Empire, the iron, and then you see these feet with the iron in it, and so it's mixed with this miry clay, which means that it's it's an alliance, but it's not a really strong alliance. Yeah, it's got strength in it through the iron. but it's also got this clay in there, and which gives it a weakness, a fragility. So, because there's a lot of these countries that are in that European Union. I think that the European Union, as it is right now, is going to break up. It's just not going to hold up. We see a lot of turmoil going on over there right now, and of course, I think it's going to be Germany. That's again, a Fourth Reich. Germany is going to be the one that leads it. And another study I'd like to do sometime is about the Assyrians and the house of Israel, the northern kingdom, and who they are in today. It's believed, and from migration patterns going back back to like 2500 BC, when the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, came to power, and they began to defeat the Assyrians, and the Assyrians had captured the house of Israel and had assimilated them basically and spread them all out. And then as the Assyrian Empire began to decline and the Babylonians began to rise, the Assyrians' capital was Nineveh, largest city in the ancient world, in the Western ancient world, and they basically abandoned it and moved on. And when you begin to look at some of the things concerning the Germans and the people in that area, the Germanic people, the Slavic peoples, you can see characteristics in the German people that really align with the characteristics of the Assyrian people. And the Father says he used Assyria as an iron of correction, a rod of correction against the house of Israel. And when you read what it says about the last days, it says the time of Jacob's trouble, the time of Israel's trouble. Well, now, if you look at Israel over there today in the Levant, the country of Israel, those people are Jews. Okay, they're not the house of Israel. They are of the tribe of Judah. Okay, so that's just one tribe, maybe some Benjamites and some Levites that are in there with them. Okay, and there's also false Jews, people that claim they're Jews, but they're not. They're of the synagogue of Satan. They're there to they're infiltrating. They're Satan's minions that he's placed in there, these false Jews. But you still have that 10 houses, that 10 nations from the house of Judah, or from the house of Israel, that got scattered out. And you can go back to Ezekiel, back to Exodus and or to Genesis, when Israel gave his blessings to his children, and he gave the blessings to Joseph, but he blessed his sons. He adopted his sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. I don't want to get into that too much, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of how this rod of correction that the fathers, used on the house of Israel back then, he's going to use again. He's going to use that same rod of correction, the Assyrians, against the house of Israel. Okay, and of course he's going to go against this war power, this beast the first beast coming up out of the ocean, which represents peoples, coming up out of these people, and it's going to be this 10-nation alliance that's going to rise, and they're going to be a military power like nobody's ever seen. Now, right now, the United States is still the world's military power, but we are in such disarray. I mean, the wokeness that has infiltrated the military, again, this inclusiveness stuff, and forcing medical procedures on people, causing a lot of the military people to resign and leave because they were not going to allow them to put this stuff in them. So they're scrambling, and at the same time, these other countries, they're not slowing down on their development of technology and stuff either. This is, because Satan and his minions, they've been feeding this forbidden knowledge just like they did back in the days of Noah before the flood. They, Genesis 6 scenario, it talks about how they came down here. They were, commingling with human beings, producing offspring, and they were giving them forbidden knowledge. They were teaching them about how to make war and to make weapons and a whole lot of other forbidden stuff, mixing of humans and animals and all that kind of stuff. They were way more advanced than we've been led to believe. But anyway, they've continued to do this. Those ones that were the ones that did this, these 200 Watcher class angels that came down here and done this, they were cast into Tartarus for 70 generations, and at the end of that 70 generations they would be released. And I believe that was at the latter part of the Industrial Revolution, when you saw this just vast increase. I mean, we went from 2,500 plus years of riding beast of burden and carts and donkey carts and horses and as a mode of transportation, to having trains and boats and cars and planes and rockets and computers, and I mean in this little tiny space of time. I mean, like, whew. Well, in Daniel he says that in the latter days that knowledge would be increased and people would be going to and fro, jostling for position. I mean, they and all you got to do is look at people, look at highways and see these people going back and forth, and the vast increase in knowledge. I mean, to the point where now our knowledge is doubling something like every 12 months. I mean, it is just incredible. Well, this knowledge has been being fed to mankind by these fallen entities, because again, they got control here. Now, of course, the Father limits, again, he limits what they can do. I mean, at any one time, it's been like spoon feeding. But as time moves along and our knowledge begins to really accelerate, then the technologies that will be developed, like now, CRISPR-9 and the genetic modifications of stuff like that of human beings and animals and everything else that's going on, you're going to see a lot of stuff that just is going to blow your mind. And it's starting to accelerate. But that being the case, it shows you that these entities, they can give that technology to whoever they decide they want to give it to. And when it comes to the time of Jacob's trouble, Israel's trouble, the house of Israel and the Jews over in Israel, I mean, they're going to be a center of this, but it's not just them. It's the United States and the British Isles, the United Kingdom, that are really going to be the object of the rod of correction from the Assyrian, because it even calls this entity that arises, this beast, the Assyrian. It calls him the idol shepherd, it calls him the Assyrian, the Antichrist, the lawless one. I mean, it could different things, but this beast rises up, and along with this religious system. And this religious system is the one that is going to empower this first beast. When you listen to what it says there in Revelations about how he, ends up causing people to worship this first beast, this second beast does. because people are going to be wondering, saying, "Wow, who is likened unto the beast? Who is able to wage war with him?" And that's because and if you look at what's going on over there, like with the World Economic Forum, and the Germans, I don't want to come down hard, be just bashing on them or nothing like that. But if you look, this is something that's kind of being forced onto them. They I don't think they really, in general, the people after World War I and World War II, they have an aversion to being put into this kind of a position. But I think it's kind of being forced on them because of America's and Britain's indecisiveness. It's dysfunctional, being dysfunctional. Here we're so divided and so dysfunctional that if we got attacked, even with the military that we have and all that there, if we got sneak attacked, I don't know that we could survive it or be able to respond in kind because of the leaders that we have. They are so worried about political correctness and inclusiveness that it has just made them dysfunctional. They're just not able to function. I mean, you just look on the news at the things that you see these people left and right that are associated with them being, locked up, resigning because of corruption and scandal. And so these people, these other powers, they see all this. And then, when you have a president that cannot even hardly carry on a conversation, supposed to be the leader of the free, the Western world, these people start looking somewhere else for a leader. And of course, one's going to arise. I mean, because they're in turmoil over there in Europe too. I mean, it's not like they're not either. I mean, you see what happened in Italy. That was a referendum. That they were not satisfied with what was happening in Europe. And you've got other, the Netherlands, and you've had the protest in France. And Brexit with England leaving the European Union. I mean, you have this breaking up here, and of course, nature abhors a vacuum. Somebody will feel that, and of course, I think that's what's coming. I think you're going to see a realignment and all this, which is going to give rise also to this religious system, which is already rising. I mean, we can see it. There's been these alignments between the Catholics and Islam. They were over there in Babylon at the site of where the Tower of Babel was at, and they made some kind of an alliance there. It's the first time any pope has ever been there, ever. Then you also see the World Council of Churches. It's got something like 1,500 denominational churches as members of it that are, and the Catholic Church is a part of it as well. And they have basically come to a unified religious belief, the ecumenical movement, and the ones that have not fell into it, the denominational churches that are the more conservative churches or whatever, have not fell in. But still, even those, their doctrine is deception too, a lot of them. I mean, they're not teaching. There's only a few churches that I've seen, or groups, or peoples that, and most of them are not affiliated with any denominational church. Because denominational, that means division. That's divided. And of course, the true church, the Israel of Elohim, is not divided. We are of one mind and one doctrine, and that is the doctrine of the Messiah, Yahushua Jesus Christ, and nothing else. This is our truth. And so we've established who the adversary is, who the ruler of the world is. Now let's talk about how they're going to go about this deception here. Look at 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9. And in Thessalonians, there's a lot that Paul talks about here concerning this kind of stuff. Chapter 2, verse 9. And even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. And of course, this is also in Revelation, where it talks about that as well. With all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause Elohim shall send them strong delusions, that they should believe a lie. Now, I think that this deception is a multifaceted deception. I think it's a religious deception, but it's also, we know that during this time, it talks about Michael and his angels fighting Satan, the dragon, and his angels, and that they were cast down to the earth. Well, or is that spiritual? Or are they going to be here just spiritually here? Or are they actually really going to show up here in the physical? I don't know. That's part, they're going to claim they're aliens or something, and that's part of the great deception. You can read into it a lot of different things, but I know that the strong delusion is really, I believe, this religious system that is part of it. They kind of go hand in hand. That it is because he'll be able to do these, because it says that Satan gives his power to them, that they can perform these wonders and lying signs and all, and that's how they're really going to deceive mankind, the whole, because it says he deceives the whole world. And that's why I say about these these false traditions and stuff like that, that, hey man, if the world's doing it, and everybody, because a lot of people that practice stuff like Christmas and all that stuff, they're not Christian. They don't even claim to be Christians. They just like doing it because it's fun. Same thing with Easter. They just like dressing their kids up and buying them Easter baskets with eggs and candy and all that stuff. It's been commercialized, so mainstream people take part in it as well as so-called Christians. So what I say is, if the world's doing it and you claim to be a believer, then you shouldn't be doing it. I mean, if because we're to be in the world, not of the world. We're not supposed to be partakers of the world, the things of the world. And if everybody's doing it, then that right there kind of ought to be a flag to you, a red flag that, wait a minute, man, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Now, I'm not saying that, that we're not, we don't have to in some way interact with the world. I mean, we have to work and have a job and, provide for our families and stuff like that, which is, we're commanded to do that. But when it comes to things, because, there's nothing wrong with working, I mean, that's a good thing. But when it comes to these traditions and, things that we know that the scriptures tells us not to be doing these things, not to be watching this garbage coming out of Hollywood, not to be listening to these false teachers, then we need to Come out of her, my people, and be not partaker of her sins, or receive of her plagues. And every time it's saying her, everywhere you look at in the scriptures, it's always talking about religion. It's always, described as a woman, or a harlot. It's talking about a religious system, that is playing the harlot. That's the reason it talks about Christ's bride, his virgin bride, that did not defile themselves with these other religions, with these false religions. And so, because, you go back into Hosea, read the book of Hosea, and see what was going on with the house of Israel. They were worshiping idols. They had idols set up in Samaria and then up in the area of Dan, and they were calves, golden calves. They were worshiping these things, and they were, sacrificing their kids to idols. They were doing all that stuff. Everything that he commanded them, in Deuteronomy chapter 12, not to do, in Deuteronomy chapter 28, not to do, they were doing it. And that's why the Assyrians, the rod of his correction, came upon them. And he's going to do it again. This time, though, it's the last time. This time will wake them up. Wake up the house of Israel. And if you look at America and the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, we're doing the same exact thing that the house of Israel was doing there in the book of Hosea. So, but let's move on here. We're going to read some from 1 Timothy here. And this is chapter 1, verse 20. It says, of whom is Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I have delivered unto Satan, that they may learn not to blaspheme. Now, the reason I kind of throw this in there is that we can be given over to Satan for a time. If we're believers, we're in the body, and we start doing something, because see, they had been blaspheming, and so Paul gave them over to Satan for a time so that they could be corrected and then be brought back into the fold. So the Father will, he uses Satan. That's, because Satan can't do anything, again, that Father don't allow him to. So he uses him as a means of correcting us and trying us and tempting us and bringing about tribulation on us. That's how he refines us. Because I just said, about how Adam and Eve basically said, hey, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to go out here and do it the way we want to do it. And so basically they shut him out. They shut the Father out from his blessing and his, his correction and teaching us. They, rejected that. And so the last 6,000 years has been a point of, trial, tribulation, and trying of the human race. And, people want to say, well, why does God allow these things to happen, all these horrific things? Because we, we run him out. We basically said, we don't want nothing to do with you. We want to do it our way, and this is the result of it. And in order for us to really kind of finally get the message, we've got to be brought down to the point where we're going to annihilate ourselves. We're going to literally annihilate ourselves, because he says if the days were not shortened, no flesh would be spared. No, not one. None. And that's exactly where we're headed to. You look at the flexing, China and Russia and the United States, and you got people up here, these, our leader here in Washington, that's over there babbling stuff to these people. it's almost like they're trying to start World War III. And it's probably what's going to happen. It's probably going to lead to World War III, and out of the ashes of that is where this beast system is going to rise up, to fill that vacuum. And of course, America is going to be devastated. And so is the United Kingdom. I mean, neither one of us is going to escape it. And that's because, just like with Assyria and the house of Israel, we've fallen into complete apostasy and decadence, man. I mean, every kind of horrible thing that people can do, we're doing. And and sitting back here, like it says about the woman in the wilderness there saying, nobody sees me, I sit a queen, and nobody's going to dethrone me, destruction or nothing's going to come upon me. Well, that's the kind of way these people's mentality is here, is that we're the most powerful military in the world, nothing's going to happen to us. Well, it says that whenever they say peace and safety, sudden destruction cometh upon them. And it's going to be somebody, somehow or another, they're going to think that they have come to some kind of terms of peace about all this stuff, and as soon as they do, boom, sudden destruction. And that's the way Satan works. He deludes these people, gives them these delusions. It also says, because they would not receive the truth, for this cause they're given over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are inconvenient. And they these leaders, not just here, leaders in other countries too. I mean, this is not just affecting the United States; it's a worldwide thing. But since we are supposedly the leader of the free world, of the Western world, it automatically comes, says, you basically can say, well, this is these people. If you look at them, you look at what they do, not just what they say, you got to look at their actions. They're deluded. Their minds are reprobate. And so, but the sad fact of the matter is that everybody suffers because of it. It's not just them that's going to suffer; it's us too. But in Matthew 24, before I go there, I want to go to Timothy 5:15 also, and it's a related scripture to that about people being given over to Satan. Must have wrote that down wrong. Yeah, I did. Anyway, we can look at some scriptures here, and I want to kind of again establish how this system has come about the way that it is. This is in Revelations chapter 2, because we've got to understand how this has come about, and so that we can recognize it. I mean, unless you recognize this system, you're going to get deceived by it and how it came to be. This is in Revelation 2, 9. This is when Christ gives the revelation, and he's talking about these 7 churches, which I believe represent 7 church ages. But anyway, this is Revelation 2, 9. It says, I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. They were people there claiming they were Jews, trying to confuse these people. But but they, it's like the ones that, the Zionists there in Israel today, these Rothschilds and people like that claim they're Jews, but, they've got a really murky background. I mean, when you start trying to look these people up, I don't think they are. And then you have Revelation 2:13. I know thy works and where thou dwellest. This is talking to the church of Pergamos. Where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is, and thou holdest fast my name, and hath not denied my face. Now, whenever Babylon fell to the Medo-Persians, that Babylonian mystery religion that all religions kind of come out of went to Medo-Persia, okay, and it commingled with their religious system. And then whenever the Greeks overthrew them, it got mixed in with their religious beliefs, and it had moved to Pergamos. That had been a Greek city, Pergamos, and so it moved there. And at this particular, time when, this was being written, the Roman Catholic Church really hadn't been established. I think it was in like the 2nd century is when it kind of really raised its head up, because this religious system in Pergamos, after the Romans began to really dominate the Western world, there in the Middle East and in Asia Minor, and then it moved from Pergamos to Rome, and that's where it's been ever since. And they mixed Christianity in with it. Again, it was, if you look at it, it's all inclusive. It has all these religions mixed in with it. And you can see where, like, you have these ecumenical churches where one week they got a rabbi preaching, the next week they got an imam preaching, and next week they got a Baptist preaching, the next week they got a Confucianist, giving a message, a Taoist, and on and on and on and on at these, ecumenical churches that, pretty much any religion other than the true ecclesia, Christianity, the church, the true ecclesia, they're not allowed. If you went in there and started, teaching this the way that it really is, they'd run you out. Start calling out homosexuality, and you start calling out, all the blatant sins and the violation of the commandments and stuff. They run you out. They drive you right out into the street. So that's what this system is going to be. And that's how it's going to be able to deceive the whole world, is because it's so inclusive. Everybody's welcome except for true believers. Because it talks about how they're going to go after the true believers, and persecute, and there'll be a lot of martyrs. Through this church here, this mother of harlots, there's been millions and millions and millions of martyrs down, for the last 2,000 years. Beginning there in the 1st century, they was, that first church was the martyr church, and then down through the ages, there's been millions of people killed that refused that false church their doctrine, and because of it, they were killed for it, tortured, and everything else. Let's go back here and look at. Let's look at some more verses here in Revelations. Revelations chapter 12. Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out, and I said this earlier, that old serpent which called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. Deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Okay, and this is when that war in heaven goes on, and it deceives the whole world. I mean, chapter 13 and verse 11, and this is where it talks about the second beast. It says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. This is that false Christianity. You know, he's Christ-like, but he speaks like a dragon. And he's going to be able, like I said, he's going to be able to perform, you know, right here it says, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. So, you know, he's given power to do these miracles that's going to deceive everybody if they're not grounded in the Word. If they're not on that foundation, and what foundation is that? Christ. The true Messiah, Yahushua Jesus Christ. He's our foundation. He's the chief cornerstone. The stone cut without hands. He's the one that we have to, you know, build our life on that foundation. No other foundation can be laid except that which has been laid. And we build our life on that foundation. And, you know, that's how, you know, our belief is revealed by what we build on that foundation. All right, Revelation 17:3. And this is where it's talking about this harlot that it pursues after the believers. This is in the tribulation. This is not pre-trib. This is during the tribulation. It says, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color. Who wears purple and scarlet garments? Could it be the Catholic Church? Decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of fornication, the false communion. They call it transubstantiation, where it actually really turns into blood. Drinking real blood, which is an abomination. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon, the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Christ. Just told you that the history of that church is littered with the bodies of martyrs, of the followers of the true Messiah. She's drunk with it and going to continue to be drunken with it. And I believe that this has been going on still even today, that they have been killing and murdering martyrs, people that are believers around the world. But it's going to intensify. And of course, and I'll talk about overcoming this system. But deception. This deception here in Matthew chapter 24, and I've talked about Matthew 24 quite a bit. It's called the Olivet Prophecies. Christ is talking to his disciples, and they're asking him, "What shall be the sign, the signs of the end of the age, and your coming back?" He said, take heed. I mean, this is the first thing he says. So this ought to drive it home just how critical this is for our walk with him and not being able to be deceived. He says, take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. So the very first thing he says, take heed, no man deceive you. Many will come and saying they're Christ, which means anointed. So many will come saying they're anointed. So listen to me. Listen to what I'm saying. What I'm saying. I received the revelation. I received the prophecy. This is the end of it. There are no more prophecies. The only prophesying that we do comes from this. There's no more revelation. This book, Revelation, the revelation of Christ, not St. John, the revelation of Yahushua, Jesus Christ. It's his revelation. That's the end of it. That's the end of revelation. That's the end of prophecy. This completed book, the scriptures, that's it. That's not to say that people cannot get prophecy from here, that the Father puts into their mind through a vision or through, of something that is getting ready to happen that fulfills this. So that they can be prepared for it. Or that they can warn people to be prepared for it. But given new prophecies, new revelation, there is no more. This is it. So you got to be wary of these people that say, I got a revelation from the Lord. I got a prophecy. And they always get proved out to be false. Because only the Father can give you truth. Only he can make come to pass that which he prophesied. I've emphasized that over and over again. That's how we know this is true. This is real. It's because it has fulfilled itself. Everything that is said would come to pass has come to pass with 100% accuracy. No other religion could ever make that claim. None. Okay. Then we got, Mark 13:5, and it's kind of a repeat of this. But he's saying the same thing here. And again, this is to emphasize it. This is Mark 13:5 and 6. And Yahushua answering them began to say, take heed lest any man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And when you read this, if you read this whole book, this whole chapter, it lays out the events that are going to be taking place in parallel with the four horsemen of the apocalypse. The white horse, the red horse, the black horse, and the pale sickly horse. It lays them out. Wars and rumors of wars. Kingdoms against kingdoms, famines, and they'll deliver you up and shall beat you and kill you for my name's sake. And this white horse represents this false religious leader. That's why he said, take heed that no man deceive you. Many shall come saying they're Christ. And it's a false. That's why if you look in Revelation 19, whenever the Messiah comes, he's on a white horse. But he's got many crowns. That one in Revelation 5 is one crown. And the Messiah on that second white horse has got a vesture dipped in blood and a name of, written in his vesture, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And that's the difference. So, it's a false Christ. That's the reason it shows him riding a white horse. He's trying to appear as the Messiah. And then afterwards, that red horse represents war. He's given power to go out and kill and make war. So we have to recognize this lamb with two horns that speaks like a dragon, and recognize their false doctrine. We have the doctrine of Christ. You compare it to that, what he says and what they say, about keeping his commandments. And that's one of the things that in Revelation chapter, let's see here, I've got it wrote down here somewhere, where it talks about those who overcome having the, let's see, Revelation 14:12, I think it is. No, that's the one I just read. Yes, Revelation 14:12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of Elohim and the faith of Yahushua Jesus Christ. I mean, this is getting toward the end of it all, and it's saying, that the ones who keep his commandments, because this religion is coming, they're going to be lawless. They're not going to be telling you to keep the commandments. They're going to be telling you the opposite. And if you listen to a lot of these churches, oh no, you don't have to keep the commandments. That's old law. That's old school, man. You just go down here and say a little prayer, and we'll sprinkle you with some water, and or dip you in some water, and once saved, always saved, brother. You're good to go. Don't worry about keeping them commandments. Yeah. So, over and over again, we see, where he makes it clear that keeping his commandments is absolutely a requirement. Now, of course, in our flesh, it's impossible for us to keep these laws. But if we are have the Ruach, the Spirit of Elohim in us, then we can. Because he will empower us to be able to, as a part of our being sanctified to obedience. That's what the whole sanctification process is about, is bringing us to absolute obedience. And if we are doing that, if we are indwelled by his Ruach, then they're not going to be able to deceive us with this false doctrine. We'll see through it. And so, because, Satan is going to put, as we get closer to the end, he's going to be throwing everything he has at man to deceive him. And, he's going to appeal to people's flesh. Pleasures of the flesh. That's when it says, those who don't take his mark can't buy or sell. But the ones who do, of course, they're gonna take care of them. Now, he tells you there's one way you overcome the beast, keeping his commandments and the doctrine of Christ. That's one way. Let's look at some other things here. 2 Corinthians, because it really comes down to keeping, overcoming this stuff. I mean, we overcome it in Christ, and keeping His word here in 2 Corinthians chapter 11. It says, and these are some of the things that help us to be able to do this. It says, this is chapter 2, verse 10. To whom you forgive anything, I forgive also. For if I forgive anything, to whom I forgave it, for your sakes forgave I it, in the person of Yahushua, Jesus Christ. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. Having something against somebody and not being forgiving is one of his devices. And of course, he says if we don't forgive, we're not going to be forgiven. So Paul's trying to emphasize here about forgiveness, that he forgives this person even though the person didn't do anything to him personally. But he could hold something against them because of what they did to one of his one of his followers, one of his disciples like Timothy or Titus or somebody like that. Because how human nature is if I got a friend over here and you do something to my friend, well then you've done something to me. Vicariously, through my friend, you hurt him, you hurt me. So I'm going to hold something against you. Well, he's telling us, we've got to forgive that person too, even though they didn't directly do anything to us. And that's a part of how we overcome Satan's devices. Because the more we fall into these things, these like holding a grudge, not forgiving, hate, these strong and powerful emotions, the further down we're going to go until we just turn around going back the other way again. And of course, once that happens to you, then you're open for this deception because your mind is going to be given over to that. The Father will give you over to that. So, that's why he says pray without ceasing. Pray always. And in Matthew 24, let's see, Matthew 24, I think it's verse 25. Again, Matthew is 24 is a really, it's a kind of a chapter that is for our time. Let's see, it might be. Oh, here we go. Here in the last verses here, it talks about watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord doth come. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. We need to know that he's coming. We need to be watching. We need to be a watch person, a watchman. Because we don't want to be caught doing things that we shouldn't be doing and get caught unawares. Because he will. He's going to come like a thief. And that's why he says for us to be doing those things. Don't be drunk. Don't be reveling. Don't be committing fornication. Don't be doing these things, thinking that he's delaying his appearing. Oh, well, I can do this, and I got time. Well, at what time you least expect, that's when he's going, boom, and you're going to be caught. So, in Ephesians 6:11, Ephesians 6:11, and this is for, you can never emphasize this enough. Paul says in verse 10 here, he says, finally, my brethren, be strong in Yahuwah, in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of Elohim, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Because it's like I've said before, if we stand alone, try to stand alone against Satan, we don't have a chance. We don't have a chance, at all. But we do have a chance if we do this. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places, or against wicked spirits. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand the evil day, and having done all to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth. And where's the truth? Right here. And having on the breastplate of righteousness. We have to live righteously. These people that try to tell their flock, these false teachers, these deceptors, that you don't have to live righteously, that you don't have to attain to holiness, they're lying. They're the ones in Matthew 24 that he said, take heed to these people. Take heed to these liars, deceivers. Because he tells us over and over again, except your righteousness exceed that of the Pharisees, ye in likewise shall perish. So, it says, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. That means to go and do. That means to be telling people about this, warning them. The gospel, giving them the gospel. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith you shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. Faith. The shield of faith. I mean, that's probably your primary defensive weapon, is your shield. To defend you against them fiery darts of the wicked. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Ruach, which is the word of God. Okay? The helmet of salvation. Being saved protects your vital noggin there. And then the sword. Word. That's the reason when the Messiah comes back, it says he has a two-edged sword coming out of his mouth, which is the Word. He destroys them with his Word. Okay? And that's how we overcome them. That's our only offensive weapon. This is our only offensive weapon in our kit of armor, is his Word. Everything else is defensive, but the sword, that's our offensive weapon. And it says, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Ruach, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints. That's praying for us, praying for each and every one, praying for each other, that we might be able to stand. Because it's easy to sit back and, armchair quarterback and see, well, if they'd have done this or if they'd have done that, if they'd have been walking rightly, that wouldn't happen to. Well, we don't know what we would do, what we do when we got in that situation. I mean, it's easy to sit back and second judge what somebody does from a distance until we fall into that same condition or same situation. How are we going to react? Are we going to take a stand? Even if it means our life? It's easy to say you will. I mean, all we got to do is look at Peter when he denied the Messiah. He says, I'll never deny you. I'll even go to the death with you. And Christ said, before the cock crows, you'll deny me 3 times. And he did, even to the point where he was cursing. Saying, denying. So, and Peter was right there with him, and he saw all the miracles that he did. And yet, when the rubber met the road, his tire blew out. He did not stand. And so, we don't ever want to get to that point where I would never do that. That's a mistake. Don't ever say what you will not do, because you're setting up the situation by which you will be confronted with that very thing that you say you won't do. Scripture tells us that if the Lord will, because he will let you get challenged by that very thing that you boast about you won't do. He'll put it in front of you, and then you'll have to see whether you stand or not. So we need to be praying for ourselves and for our brothers and sisters in Yahushua, in Christ. And let's look here at 1 Thessalonians. There's another little scripture here. 1 Thessalonians 5:16. It says, rejoice evermore, pray without ceasing, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of Elohim and Yahushua Jesus Christ concerning you. And to abstain from, it says, quench not the spirit. In other words, whenever the Spirit is leading you to do something or to correct something in your life, don't quench it. Do it. Despise not prophesying. Now you got to understand that the scriptures had not been completed, so people did still prophesy. Paul prophesied. I mean, obviously he's written all of these books here, that a lot of it is prophecy. Prophesying basically is giving a word from Elohim. It's revealing a word from Elohim. But we're to test it. We're to test, things that people say. We're to test these things. It says, prove all things, test all things. Right here, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. Okay? In order for us to prove these things, we have to prove it by whether it's good or bad, whether it's good or evil. It says, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. If we do the proof of it and it ain't good, and what is our litmus test for good? This in here, this word tells you what's good and what's evil. And so we prove it, whether it's good or evil, through this word. That's how we do it. I always say this. We judge everything else. This is our foundation of truth. And everything else is judged from this as to whether it is true or false, good or evil. And abstain from all appearance of evil. Don't be hanging around with things that are evil. Evil people that are doing evil. You can't hang around with them people. I don't care if they're your family. If they're doing evil and they will not hearken to your voice to stop, when you tell them, hey, you need to stop doing that and repent, and they won't do it, then don't hang around them people. Because you're becoming a partaker of it. And the very Elohim of peace sanctify you wholly, and I pray Elohim, your whole spirit and soul and body be preserved blameless unto the coming of Yahushua Jesus Christ. Faithful is he that calleth you, who also will do it. Brethren, pray for us. Greet all the brethren with a holy kiss. And he's faithful. He is faithful. I've said this before. He who has begun a good work in you is faithful and just to finish it. But we got to be a willing vessel. We got to be obedient. And if we are, then he'll keep us from this deception. He won't let us be deceived. But we have to be obedient, and we have to listen and prove things out and refrain from appearances of evil. If it has the appearance of evil, we don't need to be a part of it. We need to be away from it. And so, this is, I know, going really a long time here, but we got to, we've identified who the ruler of this world is. We've identified, what his deceptions are, his devices, the things he uses. He uses doubt. He uses Christ-like appearance, horns like a lamb, but speaks like a dragon. Appearances can be deceiving. And that's why we have to prove things. That's why we have to test things against the word. And again, this is going to be a world religion, and it's going to have trappings of every religion in the world in it. And if you see this, if you see a religion that has all these trappings and is all inclusive, you're not going to see a bigger red flag than that. And if you willfully ignore it and reject it, then you're going to take part in her plagues. That's what it says. Come out of her, my people, and be not partakers of her sins, and receive of her plagues. Because if you follow this system, you're going to receive of the plagues that come upon it. Whenever his wrath is poured out, that last year of the Great Tribulation, that's what that's going to be. Is the day of Yahweh is going to be the pouring out of his wrath. And it says, even as these things are going on, they blaspheme him. They blaspheme him. Because they have gone so far down into sin. I mean, it's sin has reached its pinnacle that there's no way out for them. They won't repent. Their rejection of our Creator is complete. And so they received the full brunt of his wrath. And he tells us, I think it's in Luke 21, pray that ye be counted worthy to escape these things which are coming upon the earth. Because he is going to, he's going to take a certain amount of people that have been really faithful, that have been obedient, and he's going to preserve them through it. Not no secret rapture. No, he said he would preserve you through it. And Christ said, I don't pray that they be taken out of this world. I pray that ye keep them from the evil. He's never asked the Father to take us out of this world to protect us from the evil, but to preserve us through it, to keep us from it. And so we need to be praying that we are counted worthy to escape. Otherwise, we're going to be martyrs, or we're going to yield over to that beast system. Because it talks about in chapter 6 of Revelation about the souls of those who were slain for their testimony. They didn't deny Christ. Their blood was crying out for vengeance on those people. And I think that's the martyrs of all throughout Christian history that were slain for their testimony are crying out. Their blood's crying out from the earth, just like righteous Abel, when his brothers, Cain slew him. The father said his blood's crying out from the earth. It's crying out, and I think theirs is doing the same thing. Because it talks about the life being in the blood, and so their blood's crying out there, and there'll be those during the tribulation that that might not be taken out and preserved, a remnant that's preserved through it of the house of Israel and of the Israel of Elohim that will be preserved through it. And won't have to experience the full brunt of the stuff that is going to be going on there, because they're going to be pursuing, the followers, the true followers of the Messiah. They're going to be, coming after. It says there's a flood. He pursues them like a flood. Well, that's people. That's water always represents people, and this flood of water pursues after them. And the Father protects them from it. It says it opens up the earth and it swallows them up. Well, it's talking about, an army or something that's going to be pursuing out, beating the brushes, trying to find these Christians, true believers, and to kill them, torture them, kill them, whatever, cut their head off. And that's why I said in the last video, probably, Islam will be one of the, because that's one of the ways they kill people, is they cut their heads off, is that, they'll be used by this false religious system as their enforcers or whatever of their religion, and the overriding scourge. But anyway, I would like to say I appreciate you folks for watching, my videos. I hope that they are a blessing to you. That because this is a learning experience for me as well as for you. That's why we need to be studying. And there's things that sometimes I got it wrong. I'll admit that. I don't always have it right. Because Paul said, we see now as looking through a glass dimly. That we're not seeing all of it. We're not seeing all, of the truth of it. There'd be some things that we don't get right down to the end. But in the millennium, whenever Christ is here, and we'll understand all of it then, everything. But now we see, as looking through a glass darkly, we see parts of it. We don't see all of it, and that's why we must be continually studying His Word, praying for understanding, praying for revelation, praying for truth, seeking truth, and He'll reveal it to us. He'll reveal what we are ready to receive. Sometimes, we may have it wrong, and He'll correct us on it. He'll bring us to it and show us, hey, this is what it really means. That's why we need to study. That's why I do these here, because this is a study for me as well. It motivates me to get into the Word, to look up words, the Hebrew and the Greek, and to see what these, what they really said, what their definition of this word really means. Because sometimes you can have a little ambiguity in certain scriptures, a word or something. That's why a good dictionary is helpful. You can look a word up in a dictionary, concordance. You can see what it was really, what that word meant in the Hebrew or in the Greek. That's why 2 Timothy 2:15, study to make thyself a workman that need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth, of Elohim's word, rightly dividing the word of truth, because without study, we're not going to get the truth of it. We have to, he says, I think it might be in Isaiah or somewhere there, says that it is the glory of Elohim to conceal a matter, but it is the honor and duty of kings to search a matter out. Sometimes He hides these things from us because He wants to see whether we truly, really want to know. Are we really truly in our hearts, do we truly desire to know the truth? And we prove that desire by study. If He sees we're doing the work, and we're praying, and fasting, and doing the things that we should be doing, keeping His Sabbath, and keeping His commandments, then He knows we're serious. He knows our hearts. He says, He searches our hearts, and if He sees that deep down in our heart we really are serious, then He's going to reveal His truth to us, and He's not going to tell us something wrong. We get it wrong whenever we are not, really getting into it and not really serious. And sometimes, He'll let us stumble along there as a way to bring us to some kind of correction. That he lets us go along thinking something because we're not listening to the Ruach. We're not listening to what He's telling us it says. We kind of got a preconceived idea in our own minds about what we think it means. And so just, I want to put an emphasis on that about study and seeking truth and, like I said, be a good Berean, receive what I say with an open mind, but do your homework, do your studying, pray about it, pray for me, that, that I'll, receive, truth and discern between the right and the wrong, the good and the bad, and that none of us will be deceived by this here deception that's coming out, which, the scripture even tells us what it's going to be. So if it's telling us, we need to, we should be able to see it coming. And we already do. It's already been at work in the world. Paul said the spirit of Antichrist is already at work in the world. And that was in his time. So, it's never went away. It's been going on all along, but it's just, amplifying today. But anyway, with that being said, I love you folks. I hope you'll be blessed. And I'll see you next time, Yahuwah willing.